What is up, homies? Welcome to a very special video. This is a Heroes Reforged special presentation of our recap of the Hall H panel from San Diego Comic-Con. This is a bit of a lighter panel compared to what we've been used to since the last time they did this. Last time they came out in 2022.
But at the same time, it's a heavy panel.
It is. It has some really big repercussions on the MCU. But in terms of titles, I think a lot of people go into San Diego Comic-Con expecting to see what's the next 10 years of storytelling? What's the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
Right.
And previously in 2022, when Marvel Studios showed up, they showed us this enormous infographic that was, hey, let's look into the future of the Multiverse Saga. Let's look a little bit into the end of Phase 4, tap into Phase 5. Oh, but we'll also show you like 3 titles from Phase 6. And that was kind of it. A lot has changed in those 2 years. We had 2 strikes that completely upended the industry, and Marvel had to, push all those things aside. It's a controversial topic, but some people would argue that they've had some storytelling hurdles that they've had to overcome also, based on how certain movies have done, how certain shows have done.
But it is noteworthy because the Marvel Cinematic Universe itself has commented on it. It's not something that is... I think a lot of it, I think a lot of it can be ignored, but I think in the past, this studio has changed gears when something wasn't working as well as they wanted to. You could just look at the difference between Thor 2 and 3. And the other big thing,
King.
that's the other elephant in the room. This really promising young actor, and then things happened that were out of the studio's control, and they fired him. And And there are discussions and rumors about them not being legally allowed to recast this role, which is why they're just seemingly abandoning the Kang storylines altogether, which is really just the tail end of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. A little bit of fate of that one. A little bit of Loki, but that one fate of that one prime Kang, did he really die? And that quantum realm explosion thing gets sucked into another thing? And then what's up with the Council of Kangs? That's really the dangling thread, or like the tag that is seemingly not going to be addressed anytime soon. I do think that if, again, Marvel, with their army of Disney lawyers, really had a creative desire to let's wrap that up, or speak to it, that they would recast the role of Kang, and it would just be another black male actor playing all of the variants and the versions of Kang. I'm pretty sure Disney lawyers could find a way to go, well, Jonathan Majors, the actor, broke this contract, so we're going to go ahead and proceed. It definitely could be affected by that, but it seems like it's more of we're going off of the audience's reception to the character. Feels a little bit different than how the audience responded to some early appearances of Thanos and that excitement. And especially as soon as they were going with Infinity War, they were going. The train was moving. There's no changing that. They're in an early enough spot now that they were like, maybe it's not the Kang Dynasty, maybe it's something else. Because maybe Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania did not hit the way they wanted to. It did not get audiences buzzing about that villain. And that's a shame, because I think it's a cool character. And I liked the character in that movie. I thought they did a good job with it. The arguments of, did any major characters die in that film? Did we feel the sort of dread of this character? I mean, you could still point to Thanos, though. You could point to Thanos sitting in that chair in those early movies and not really doing much, and they still stuck with it and then kind of stuck the landing. So a bunch of stuff's happening right now that is from their movies and TV shows, or is out of their control. And yes, they have postponed things and they're moving stuff around. Which brings us to here.
Well said. Well said. Do you work for Disney? Are you an attorney for the Walt Disney Company, you son of a bitch? But you're absolutely right, though. You're absolutely right. And we all know that when these actors do these contracts, it's not for one movie. It's not even for one sequel. It's for movies and sequels 9 of other franchises. Yeah, it's like you're signing up for 10 movies. You're signing up for 9 movies. You're going to be in this thing. You're going to be the big bad in this potential project.
You're 90.
I know. Till you're 90. So I think that is very true. And I had honestly not considered that there may be some contractual obligations that would prevent them from recasting.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, this is a very different situation than with Chadwick Boseman. If you don't want to recast Chadwick Boseman's role of Black Panther, fine, I understand. But with Jonathan Majors, or truthfully almost any other actor or character, you could, if there was a similar situation, I feel like you could recast. And if you needed to delay the outcome of that story for those movies for a couple years because you need to kind of rework everything, totally fine. Patience is a virtue. It's all good. But it is very interesting to see them kind of swerve based on maybe the reception from the audience, reception from critics, just reception from even general audiences who are not necessarily tied into superhero lore, comic books, movies, all that sort of stuff, and to change their direction and proceed in a whole new route, which we have some mixed feelings about some of those things. The internet seems to also be mixed on some things. I think people who are fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe on a movie level are stoked about Robert Downey Jr. coming back. I think if you have this deep lore, this deep knowledge of comic book lore, you have more questions about the how, the why. They give us some answers to some things, but it's also slightly ambiguous as well. But you know, we'll talk about when we get to Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. But it's an interesting slate, you know, so we saw the previous slate. There was a lot of undated things because of the strikes. Things were pushed back. So a lot of those undated dates were then occupied by new projects. And we've also added projects as well. Now that Marvel Studios is made up of Marvel Television, Marvel Animation, and Marvel Studios making movies, there's kind of a lot more stuff. Not all of it is necessarily interconnected into the phases of storytelling, but it's worth mentioning some of them because I think, you know, they are a part of what Marvel Studios is now doing. So like X-Men 97, for example, came out this year. Is it directly tied into the phase 4, 5, 6 of storytelling that makes up the Multiverse Saga? No, but it is a multiverse story, so it's worth mentioning that. But it feels like a light year for Marvel this year, but it really wasn't because we also had Echo in January. So we went from that to X-Men 97. We're just rolling out Deadpool and Wolverine, which it's worth mentioning that movie is out and it deals with all the things that it deals with. But the next thing is Agatha All Along. D23 is happening in a couple of weeks. We know basically what we know from the first trailer. We don't totally know how it ties into the greater MCU as of right now. The show comes out in September, so we'll get a few more tidbits of info, I'm sure, in a couple of weeks at D23. But other than that, we're kind of just rolling off of what we know from what little information Marvel has given us. So I don't know. Do you guys have any other insight into Agatha All Along and how it could tie into anything, or are we just kind of leaving it as remains to be seen?
I think with all of these things, it's not so much like how could it tie in, so much as it is let the thing come out, let the thing tell us what the story is and kind of prove its worth and prove why it was greenlit in the first place and why it should exist. And then the fun stuff is that after it's all said and done, is there an opportunity to look at and go, well, where's the future of this character? Can this character come back? Or more characters? Can they appear other places? And Agatha has some stuff with, we're going to get maybe one of Scarlet Witch's sons, which like that Wiccan, character right? That character may play a role in a return of Scarlet Witch, maybe connected to Doctor Doom, maybe connected to reality reset in a way because her two boys died at the end of WandaVision. But just like in the comic books, it's going to be revealed that no, they didn't really die. Their souls were just sort of shifted to another body and aged up, and that, you know, so that it's going to be new actors playing still young but not little kid characters. That's where the Agatha thing factors in, you know. And I think that this year, it really was only Deadpool and Wolverine was the clear, obvious Multiverse Saga entry. Because Echo, X-Men 97, it's multiverse by, you know, technically by definition, and Agatha, and then we may get some other animated projects like Spider-Man, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, all that stuff. It's just really Deadpool and Wolverine is the one that's like, oh, that's the one that they're setting stuff up, and it has the TVA, and then we'll go from there. This year is, I think we get it, we see it, and everything is really looking towards next year, 2024, and what that stuff could mean going forward.
The first one is obviously Captain America Brave New World, which they didn't put out the trailer that we saw, but we did see a brand new trailer that was really cool. Gave us our first official look at Harrison Ford as Red Hulk. Characters that we did not see. We didn't see Betty Ross, played by Liv Tyler. We didn't actually see what the leader looked like, but it looks really well. It looks like a really well-made film, and it seems like it is kind of going a little bit back to what made the Captain America movie so good, which was the tone of the Winter Soldier.
I don't think anybody's seen it yet, right? I don't think anybody saw what we have seen. I can't wait for people to see that. I hope they're as blown away as we were. the Red Hulk looks so rad. And I like everything that they had to give us as far as context goes with the movie. Obviously, they didn't give us everything, but I do like the fact that it feels like they're taking the backbone of Civil War and the Winter Soldier, Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And so I feel like it's in a good place. I feel like they're starting to recognize some of the things that made the MCU great, instead of like just going and just milling along with just like whatever they were doing with like just pumping out movies and sequels, right? Because they all started kind of feeling the same. And you could argue that Captain America, that Civil War, and this is the same as that. But in the context of, like you said, Adam, having so many projects thrown at us, it's like, okay, cool, we're returning to this kind of format, which feels right for this type of movie, rather than just like, yeah, we're just going to pump out another one. It's going to look like everything you've seen in the past. Don't worry about that. This one feels special. This one feels charged. It feels like it was very well thought out as far as the tone and the emotion and the things that they want to say from it. We can talk about the fact that we heard Adamantium in this one, right? Like that was a huge deal. That was a mega deal. I actually called that. I wish I could find that video, but I called that in a video that we made, that they were going to mine that freaking celestial for adamantium. It makes 100% sense that they only found this mineral and this thing as soon as this, like, it makes sense that this celestial would be made out of adamantium. Yeah. Because there's all kinds of like rare minerals and things that obviously the celestials might be made out of, and adamantium could potentially be one of those things. In
the comics, adamantium was something that was artificially made by man after they were experimenting with vibranium. So as soon as vibranium was in the first Captain America movie, I was like, they will. I mean, they didn't have the rights to the X-Men then. It was a separate studio.
Right.
But when that merger happened, when that buyout happened, I was like, I think they'll incorporate vibranium. And it
doesn't necessarily exist inside the celestial, but mixing it with vibranium can still create some kind of an alloy. Yeah.
I am hoping that vibranium does play a part, because I think it also just fits with the themes of like that we've seen in the Black Panther movies, where the whole rest of the world's trying to colonize Wakanda, and Wakanda goes, no, sir. And they know how valuable Wakanda is, and I think it just works thematically. But yes, in the trailer we heard and saw Harrison Ford say, "I give you adamantium," and then I also saw the internet cynically respond to that, where the internet, on people on Twitter were like, "That doesn't mean anything. Relax, you nerds. It doesn't." And I go, "No, it does mean something." And the obvious thing is just the birth of Wolverine. That's all that it really means. Story-wise, it means this is the beginning stages of governments and shady people are going to maybe put together programs that do shady shit. And one of those programs is Canadian, and it's called Weapon X, and we go from there.
X,
now,
baby.
if movie people are cynical and jaded, and they're like, we don't need that. We know Wolverine's story. Let's just get to Wolverine. I understand that. But it's like, there is even a difference between the Hugh Jackman's Wolverines of the previous movies, Logan, the main X-Men movie universe, this new one, and something that is born within the Marvel Cinematic Universe sacred timeline, where the entire point of this whole franchise has been like, we're going to give you a movie, then we're going to give you another movie that shows, oh, that first movie you saw actually has roots over here. You know, you like this character, Tony Stark. Well, his father knew this character, Steve Rogers, and they connect certain characters and certain groups of characters, and it's cool. And that can lead to some great story potential. I can't guess stuff, but like, what if such and such character worked in the Weapon X program, or what if such, those kinds of things. And then, well, what does that mean? Well, that character that they might use for that kind of storyline could mean X, Y, and Z a decade from now. The same way that like they introduced a character in Avengers Age of Ultron, and her son eventually becomes Amadeus Cho, the totally awesome Hulk. Okay. Like that's the thing where like they might bring back that character someday and go, well, now her son is the super genius who blah, 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 blah. So it was so frustrating to see people piss on that parade of people getting excited about that, where they're just like, it doesn't mean anything. I'm like, it means a ton of stuff. It is cool at the end of the day. Yes.
There's also obviously a lot of talk, because Fantastic Four takes place in an alternate timeline, that those characters will kind of just be sucked up into the MCU. And there's obviously multiple shenanigan things of those sort happening throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, but I do think that with how important the X-Men are to, in my opinion, to the future storytelling of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what they represent, what they can represent, what they fight for, then I think it is really important to start the building blocks of how do we get there. And if step one is to just have Miss Marvel have a reference to mutants or the idea of what a mutant is, and then Captain America brings in adamantium, we're slowly starting to pepper X-Men into the fold.
That's what Kevin Feige said that was basically going to be their franchise post Secret Wars. Is that he said it's not going to be the blank saga. He didn't say that, but he said it's going to be the mutant era. It really is going to be what they're going to be focusing on, because my God, there are so many great characters and stories in that even 20 years of the Fox movies kind of barely scratch the surface. Like, you could do so much, and there are so many underutilized characters in that, but Wolverine is a vital character. And I hope that the MCU gets their own version of Wolverine, because I do not want Hugh Jackman to do this till he's 90. I love him, but you got to let him retire, please, at some point.
For the love of God, let him go take a nap. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
There's obviously also no confirmations about whether or not Mark Ruffalo will show up in this movie. He did talk about it on some interview. I forget where it was. It was a film festival. And then they quickly made him backpedal what he said, or they spoke on his behalf and were like, oh no, he made a mistake. Mark Ruffalo has spoiled one too many things in the MCU, so
True.
I kind of feel like he's probably going to show up.
But I want to look that up, because it's so easy for people that are journalists that are trying to ask those kinds of questions to like get details wrong and confuse the shit out of these actors. I'm sorry. These actors do multiple projects under code names. Like, I was so mad when the internet was like making fun of Gwyneth Paltrow for being like, I wasn't in Spider-Man, because it's like, cut the lady some slack, dude. She never shot Spider-Man Homecoming. She probably shot something called, Freshman Year or some code name.
Or she shot it while she was shooting Endgame. Or something,
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So, like, you have to be, like, you got to be clear with what the hell I remember people misquoting Iman Vellani talking about Miss Marvel when she answered a question super correctly. And people were like, Iman Vellani doesn't think her movie is in the same universe as Captain Marvel. And you go, no, that is the opposite of what she said. You got to know your shit if you're going to ask those kinds of really nerdy niche questions. I would want to see, if that was on video, the exchange between a reporter who asked about Captain America appearances and Mark Ruffalo, because it's like, what exactly did they say? And what exactly did Mark Ruffalo say? I would just need to see that. But I guess I could believe that he could be in it. I would be fine if he weren't in it, because I also don't think that Red Hulk or Betty Ross or the leader, that this is going to be their last appearances in any of these movies. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I bet you they got something cooking with Hulk. They now have the full rights. I think that they honestly have something planned, like a Mark Ruffalo Hulk movie, solo movie. So yeah, that's what I think.
I like that.
This isn't a Black Adam Shazam situation where people are like, hey, Zachary Levi, are you in Black Adam? And he was like, no. Like, and they'll never meet because of weird, stupid stuff. I believe that Mark Ruffalo, Bruce Banner, is going to meet these characters, man. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
I hope
absolutely.
I hope so. We need so much more Hulk in the MCU, and I have a lot of
Hulks,
thoughts.
plural.
Obviously,
we need She-Hulk.
We need all the Hulks.
Just make a movie called The Incredible Hulks. Come on. What are you waiting for?
Rad.
No,
Would be rad.
it goes back to World War Hulks, but that's wishful thinking
neither here nor
on the
there.
slate in like 2030. That's neither here nor there. There's so much that I feel like there's so much going on behind the scenes when it comes to making these decisions as to what they're going to do moving forward, right? There's a lot to consider as far as like drama stuff happening in real life, listening to fandoms, but also not listening to fandoms, because at the same time, like, I want the creators to create regardless of what they're going to do, right? And I don't know if making decisions based off what the fandom, 100% off what the fandom is saying is smart for the company in general. I'm obviously nowhere near making those kinds of decisions, but I want the chefs to cook, basically, with them being in their own little creative bubble, because I feel like that's where they really get to create cool stuff. But yeah, man, these kinds of things, I feel like we're never really going to know. And the amount of details that we get are never going to be like, well, this is fully transparently what we're doing, because we've never gotten that, and we never will. And so we're going to be speculating for a long time until these movies come out clearly. So as far as like the Cap situation goes, I do like I said before, I like where they're going. I feel like maybe the reshoots were done for really good specific reasons, and maybe
I hope so.
Deadpool and Wolverine kind of changed things a little bit, like running with some themes that they wanted to talk about in Deadpool and Wolverine. They were like, hey, well, we might have to change some things in this movie and not make it multiversal. Maybe they were trying to do something multiversal and they were just like, you know what, we'll pull back. We'll have Deadpool and Wolverine handle all this stuff. Not sure. I don't know. Once again, all speculation since we don't have any information.
I know one of the later additions was Giancarlo Esposito as Seth Volker, the Sidewinder, who's the leader of the Serpent Society, which I feel like they're just paying off a joke that they made in 2014 when they announced the slate for Phase 3, but I'm all for it. I don't know anything about the Serpent Society, so I don't know exactly what pivotal role it will have in Captain America's story. I just like Giancarlo Esposito, so I'm there kind of for him, and whatever they do with that group, go for it. I have no idea how that will tie into anything else.
Yeah,
he did announce it, and it felt like it almost felt like Giancarlo, who is an amazing, and he is a legit nerd. He loves he loves the movies that he loves. He loves the stuff that he loves.
You would think he was announcing he's playing fucking Batman.
He was. It felt like he was misinformed.
Yeah.
Because he was so excited, and he was like Sidewinder. Like he said his character's name, and he goes, "The leader of the Serpent Society, aka Sidewinder," and everyone was like, "Yeah, like just excited about
that joke
him.
from 2014."
Good for you. and it's but to answer your question, Adam, and I'm sure someone's going to disagree with me and tell me in the comments one other specific comic book story. Like Ant-Man, I think Captain America has great villains. Ant-Man has so much fewer villains, but Captain America has a really interesting rogues gallery. But I think that they've hit the major ones already so far, which were Red Skull and Winter Soldier to an extent. And I think that not doing Red Skull again, I think was smart, but that to me was the reason that out of all the comic book stories that Steve Rogers Captain America was affiliated with that are like banger stories that people really remember and are memorable and are very juicy dramatically, Civil War is going to be up near the top. Whether you like that comic book or not, I don't. It doesn't matter. I'm saying that the concept is marketable. It's a really brilliant concept. So they did that. And then for this one, they're bringing in Hulk villains because there are villains who like Sam Wilson Captain America could have gone up against, including the Serpent Society. And it was a joke just to distract us from revealing that it was Civil War years ago. But in the comic book universe, the Serpent Society are a group of terrorists. And so they have powers, but they're more street level style than like, the Eternals or something. They're not like super
they use
powered.
guns and cars.
And they have like, acid breath, and they have like we've seen the version of them. They're similar to like Cobra that G.I. Joe fights, or they're similar to the
Invincible Serpent Society.
The Invincible,
which
is the Lizard League. So like it's that kind of bad guys. And I'm sure their Captain America stories, and even some that Sam dealt with, were like, man, they're a real thorn in his side, but they're not the sort of like universe shattering, villains. So in terms of like what their role is going to be, I don't know. It would be cool if at one point in one of these movies, there's a full blown Serpent Society. It's not just one guy. It would be cool if the Serpent Society is in this film and they kind of branch out and they're bigger and they have this cool presence. But like those are characters that Avengers should be able to mop up pretty quick before going to deal with a Galactus or, so on and so forth. So I think because of that, and because maybe the third best Captain America villain is MODOK. And they did a version of MODOK in Ant-Man because he needed some bad guys because he didn't have no many. So that they did Egghead and they did
have no
like
money?
Darren Cross. We got to get him some. So they could still do a version of MODOK that's closer to the sort of scary, grotesque version that's in the comics. But that being said, they're not going to repeat that this quickly after Quantumania. So I think it's so smart for them to go, here's the thing, though. Thaddeus Ross has been a presence in these movies. And yes, William Hurt passed away. But the one thing he didn't get to do ever that like we had planned for a long time, finding a story and finding a place to bring this to life, but have him be Red Hulk. That's such a marketable idea. And then if they bring in Harrison Ford and he's in the trailers, in the trailer we got to see his face come out from a podium and it was Harrison Ford's face with mocap and he was a big Red Hulk.
Looks so good.
I'm so like, good. That thing's going to get butts and seats. you know.
Yeah.
So it's very smart for them to do that and to pull some of the Hulk characters and their motivations and everything. The other thing I'll say too, real quick, just about the footage we saw, is that controversial character Ruth definitely in that footage, and it looks like she is a President Ross's right-hand woman, and felt very sort of villainous in this role, felt very sort of villainous. So I am really curious to see how that is going to be depicted, how it's going to play out. She was not up on the stage. I don't know I don't know if that means she's not a major character, or if that just means that Marvel Studios is like, we absolutely cannot afford to invite this actor and, like, you know, have her do press and have the press ask her a question about the real world could absolutely be the worst thing. So that was my takeaway. And also Tim Blake Nelson was really stoked to, like, everybody showed him love. He was really stoked to be back. You know, Feige going, no tag left unresolved. 16 years ago we did one, and here it is again. So that was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I was watching some of the interviews, and it was interesting because Harrison Ford couldn't give any less of a shit about doing press for any movie, but he's so entertaining. I
think it was Ash Crossan who posted somewhere where she was there doing those junket interviews, and she said it was so funny because you would see Harrison Ford stop in front of somebody, listen for about 4 seconds, just drop a banger of a joke and walk away. And I'm like, that's amazing.
That's Harrison Ford for you, baby.
Absolutely. He also was pretty nimble on his feet when he was chasing after Anthony Mackie.
Oh yeah,
he was
hulking out on stage.
Nimble. Yeah. He was surprisingly nimble.
Then we saw Thunderbolts, and this has been a really interesting movie to see sort of the reception online, because a lot of people are arguing that this is being the least talked about project in this lineup or in this presentation of projects, which I don't think that's totally inaccurate, but I do think that it is a little unfair to say that it's the least talked about project, therefore it's going to be DOA. Because I think that's a really weird thing to assume and take away when you're sandwiched in between Harrison Ford as the Red Hulk, in between Fantastic Four, and then the bomb that they drop at the end of the panel with Robert Downey Jr. Yes, you do kind of become the most insignificant thing at the convention. Plus, they didn't put out a poster. They didn't put out the trailer that we saw. So how do you expect them to kind of build hype when they're sandwiched in between these things that are, yes, by definition, probably bigger than what, you know, that movie is? But let's not forget that when the movie comes out, the repercussions of the story may have bigger repercussions than some of the other things. You know, to say that it doesn't matter, that it's a drop in the bucket because it isn't trending on Twitter is kind of silly.
I think you just stumbled across the truth here, Adam. The truth is, in the footage and in the previous trailers, which, by the way, also, I don't know if people have experienced this, when we saw the Captain America Brave New World trailer in 3D, by the way, which looks sick.
Oh my God, so 3D. Wolverine, holy shit, so 3D.
They took out that quick moment where the president was being shot at, which it was like, I think that's so interesting that they did that and makes a lot of sense. It's weird sometimes how these, like, popcorn movies end up kind of reflecting unintentionally, you know what I mean? Even people who were saying, even with the blip, it was sort of COVID. Like, and
the original Spider-Man trailer.
But Adam just hit it. He goes, Thunderbolts may or may not be, like, the most consequential. I'll tell you why it might be. The Captain America Brave New World stuff is President Ross going, I want you to build the Avengers with me, right? He says that. I don't know if that's in the first trailer, but he definitely said it in this new trailer we saw, in this new scene, in this footage. And Sam Wilson's like, the Avengers, sir? Like, he's so skeptical because there's no Avengers. So,
and especially because of Ross's opinion about the Avengers leading up to the events of Endgame.
Absolutely. So then the next movie is called Thunderbolts. He goes, after years of comic book storytelling, sometimes writers and artists will use the same word, because he was trying to deny that there was a take on President Thunderbolt Ross. And I'm like, no
there
way,
will be
dude.
a deep-ass connection.
Way, dude. Don't lie to me, bro. So my take on it is,
lied in the past, so it's okay.
Sam turns him down. That means that the next film is going to be Valentina putting together their version of the Avengers, which by the end of the movie, they might change it to be called the Dark Avengers. Or that's what I think the asterisk is going to be, is that they're called the Thunderbolts. But by the end of the film, it's going to change, just like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier title changed to Captain America and the Winter Soldier. The end of the movie is going to say the Avengers. And people are going to go, what? And it's like this darker, seedier version that is puppet controlled by Valentina. Maybe Bucky walks away from it. Maybe Yelena walks away and her dad walks away. But the other members of that team, the Sentry, Bob, Ghost, Taskmaster, And then I think, Adam, you put in the notes here, that actress, wonderful actress, who's playing a character named Mel, people are speculating, and she's Valentina's like partner or assistant or something, that she's going to be a character named Songbird. She was originally a villain named Screaming Mimi. She has like sonic voice powers. I think this is going to be a version of that. And then maybe at the end of Thunderbolts, you will see Emil Blonsky. You will see like more of the shadier, U.S. agents on the roster. And it's like, you guys are now the Avengers that we can control, the Dark Avengers. And that's going to lead into Avengers Doomsday, where it's like, there is no Avengers. By that point, maybe the young Avengers are going to be running around. And that kind of stuff is what's going to make the true Avengers have to assemble again. Sam Wilson with like Carol Danvers, Peter Parker will probably be there. Like Ms. Marvel, if
And she's gonna
she'll be on the
freak
young
out.
Avengers. Yeah,
That's
but
true,
like
that's true.
it's the young people that's going to have to re-inspire, and the Thunderbolts / Dark Avengers have to re-inspire the OG heroes to come in. Thor Odinson, Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, to be like, okay, yeah, we need an Avengers, and it needs to be not government, and it needs to be so. I think Thunderbolts is going to end up being super consequential. They're just not far enough along in the effects, and they didn't want to show too much.
We've probably brought this up multiple times, but one, the marketing tactic that would not surprise me, it's like you're saying, at the end of the movie in a post-credit scene, they'll reveal a new trailer for Thunderbolts, and it'll go to Thunderbolts, and the asterisk will take over, and it'll become Dark Avengers. Or literally the day that movie opens, like maybe on Friday it opens, Saturday, new trailer, the asterisk does the same
Dark
thing,
Avengers.
and then Dark Avengers.
Does the
Because
same thing.
there is no way. I would be stunned if they have Thunderbolt Ross as the president and then the Thunderbolts following this movie, and there's no connection. It is a bold-faced lie to protect the secret of the movie, which is totally fine.
I don't know if you guys said this. I just saw this today. Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds were guest hosting for Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Yeah.
And Reynolds told the story of like, originally the movie was not called Deadpool and Wolverine. It was called Deadpool and Friend.
That story is so funny.
It's so good. And that title leaked a day in advance before they were going to put out a trailer at the Super Bowl. And that's what the movie was called, Deadpool and Friend, which is, I think, so funny. But it's also, the internet apparently hated it. So then Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and everybody were like, we have to change the title. And Disney changed it 24 hours before they put out the first trailer. Including having to probably recall movie theater standees that had Deadpool posters, and Friend. So like if they could do that, then you bet your ass that they haven't gone full blown ad yet, because they're like, yeah, it's called the Thunderbolts. Don't worry about it. It's the Thunderbolts. It's like, where's the posters? Where's the stuff you're going to put in the theaters? Don't worry about it.
Where's my coffee mug? Don't you worry, baby.
Captain America: Brave New World comes out, and at the end of that, they'll like you said, after the movie comes out is when they'll go, okay, this is the real title of the movie, The Dark Avengers.
And I do think that like it's brilliant marketing, and it's a brilliant way to give the movie something, right? Because like I was mentioning earlier, people are kind of going into it cynically of like, nobody wants to watch these like D-tier characters other than maybe Bucky and Yelena, right? Like nobody's interested in those characters. Why are we going to care? Like, why are they giving these characters a movie? Yeah. They wouldn't give the characters a movie if it wasn't consequential to something in the future. And if it's exactly what you're saying, the outcome of that movie requires the Avengers to be reassembled, then like that is the perfect reason why that would happen. So yeah.
People said the same thing about Guardians of the Galaxy, dude.
Exactly.
People were like, why would anybody want to watch? And then they end up being so important and pivotal to the Infinity 100%. Saga.
I do want to reiterate the fact, and I think it's going to be interesting to watch Florence Pugh in this movie, because everybody was raving about her. Every actor up on stage said something positive about Florence Pugh. And now seeing her, not in person, but seeing her like not through a TV screen, I was like, I understand why people fall in love with this woman.
I'm in love with her, and I've never worked with her a day in my life.
Yeah. Just looking at her, there's just like an energy that just attracts you to her. Yeah.
That whole cast was cutie patooties. I'm really excited don't you guys love that energy though? That this is already the underdog of this franchise.
It's the best.
I love
it's the best. Because it's gonna come out and crush, and people are gonna like, why was I underestimating this one?
Like, you don't care about Ghost, you don't care about John Walker, U.S. Agent, you don't care about Taskmaster. Good, give them to me. Like, I love those characters. And even after the footage, Adam, you're not as familiar with the Sentry. And it was like Bob is this character. And you're like, Bob, who the hell's Bob? And I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much cool shit that can come from just that character alone. as soon as I started explaining, because the footage was neat, all of the characters are sort of assembling in this sort of bunker, and they start kind of beating the shit out of each other. But they're all kind of on their own, so it becomes a little crossfire fight because they accidentally show up in this place at the same time, right?
Perhaps
it's like
accidentally.
Elena, it's Taskmaster, Ghost was there, U.S. Agent, I think, was there, and they're all four fighting each other. And then there's just this white guy in like a medical gown,
Hospital
that's just
gown,
like, who comes out from behind
kind
this
of panicking.
box.
Yeah.
And I'm telling Adam, I'm like, he is as powerful as Superman, maybe more, but he is not all there.
And my ears went.
That pitch
And
is already.
Here's a thing, Adam. The only and this goes back to my World War Hulk theory is the only person who could stop Hulk was the Sentry. Hulk came down and cracked Manhattan in half because he was so angry.
God!
Tony Stark
and
Tony Stark hit him with like the world armor. He had a satellite up in space with like this mega beam that could disable anybody. That failed on the Hulk, and the person they called to stop him was the Sentry. So do with that what you will, but the Sentry is important.
That's some serious business.
Is important. It's
but again,
serious, dude. He's a big guy.
I just love that energy, though, of like audiences already, especially if they're not, which is fine. If you're not familiar with the comic books that they're like pulling this from, I'm not gatekeeping, and I'm just excited because I know some of that stuff. And even just based off of, well, I didn't like Hannah Joy Commons' character Ghost in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I get it. I didn't like Wyatt Russell's character. I didn't like the Black Widow movie as much as other movies. I get it, dude. But I still found things in each of those characters, even Taskmaster. That was very interesting. And I'm curious. I'm like, is it going to be the same Taskmaster in this movie? Or is it just another person who's kind of using like, another brainwashed widow? Or another, is it a male Taskmaster this time?
I have so many questions. I know that they didn't have
that it's the same actress,
Olga on stage, but I'm pretty sure that she's been sharing stuff from set. So
sure. Okay, so I hope it is her because I also want to see the like her and Yelena had an understanding. So where are we getting to? Where is she still being brainwashed somehow? Anyway, I just love those, like within the MCU, they're like B or C tier characters.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dude, put them on. It's the same as if they came out with a movie or show that was like, here's Moon Knight and Werewolf by Night and Man Thing and all the weird little supernatural guys. I'm like, give me the weird little guys. Give me the little teams of characters that you don't. That's the best thing about these comic book universes, dude, is when you get a combination of characters that you don't expect. That is where I'll remind everybody, Blue Beetle and Booster Gold chemistry came from, because they threw together a bunch of characters and they're like, we didn't, those characters were invented separately.
Let's
and
try
if
to
now
make them
you
work.
read, if now you read comic books, you would almost think they were designed together because Ted Kord and Michael John Carter go so well together. So anyway, I'm just excited to see what the hell this thing. But it looked like it had a real fun vibe.
Oh yeah,
really cool and very slick. Well directed. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Real quick, Kevin Feige confirmed that the special presentations are not done with, and we will see more of like the Werewolf by Night and all those special presentation stuff. So good stuff.
Thank
Sorry,
God.
go for it.
Thank God. The next big one, obviously, was, which I was shocked that they had anything to show from this, which was Fantastic Four, which is officially titled First Steps. I don't really care for the subtitle too much, but I understand what Matt Shackman is trying to invoke and what he's trying to, I guess, tell audiences about what the movie is, other than it being set in a 1960s retro-futuristic alternate timeline of the Marvel Universe. Holy shit, good luck doing the press circuit with that. But I was actually really surprised that not only did he reveal, he kind of revealed it was already kind of revealed maybe a week or so before, but the whole cast came out. It's the first time they've been on stage together, and they've not shot a thing yet. So we thought, because production doesn't start until Tuesday, the very last day of July or beginning of August, but they brought out, or they showed us, this incredible like 3-minute piece of pre-shot footage that had a mixture of what the world was going to look like, what their costumes were going to look like, at least their spacesuits, and it had a mixed stuff of like visual effects tests and previs, which I was really, really impressed with how it looked. I was genuinely shocked because it looked like it could have been something in a finished trailer, and I would have believed you. Matt Shackman did say that a big inspiration for him was obviously things like 2001: A Space Odyssey. He also talked about things like the Apollo 11 documentary, and I really felt that in that footage. Like, they did a really good job making it feel like I was watching pieces of a documentary documentary or pieces of some sort of like special following this family getting together, going into space, traveling through the cosmos, or potentially traveling through the cosmos. But yeah, so I thought the footage was really cool, and we did get a tease of Galactus at the very end of it. Didn't say anything.
Yeah,
looked really imposing.
Good. No, yeah, he looked good.
Oh, I really adored it. And I think that my hesitance for this direction still kind of comes down to like, what does it mean going forward? Because if this is just, again, if this was a movie that like 20th Century Fox was trying to make in 2005, and this was like the first sort of Fantastic Four live action movie, I think it would have been too ambitious for 2005. But I think it's also like, man, how cool is this? It does feel like a live action Incredibles. That's not a bad thing.
Oh my God! If anyone says that is a bad thing, I swear to God, don't watch movies. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's redundant. Please. I don't think that the joy of this. I mean, you got Michael Giacchino doing the score. Okay, so he is the master and my favorite film composer of all time, and I think he's second maybe to John Williams in terms of like output and just like banger themes that this guy has put out. Anyway, that's my opinion. I grew up listening to Michael Giacchino stuff, but like if people have said the best Fantastic Four movie has been The Incredibles, I think it's a very different, there's absolutely similar flavors. My hesitancy is like, well, I want these characters to keep going. I want it to be this cast. I've seen people say, oh, these characters are going to die at the end of this movie because their universe is going to get snuffed out and then we're going to move into Secret. I'm like, what a waste. I don't want that because I really liked Pedro Pascal in this. We heard his Reed Richards Mr. Fantastic voice, and it was like lighter and kind of funny. And I really fell in love with that. I was like, oh, this guy, he's playing like a real little dork. It was great.
I couldn't help but laugh because it reminded me of Dave Chappelle's white guy voice.
You're right.
So it reminds me of a Latino guy doing a white guy voice. I'm like, hey guys, how's it going?
Awesome.
I'm Reed Richards.
It was like he's almost playing him by way of Bill Nye the Science Guy. He really is. He's drawing inspiration from that kind of, because there was a little educational bit where he was talking to like a classroom full of children and they were bored.
Yeah.
And he's talking nerdy, and then he turns around and he goes, "Who wants to see a big explosion?" And they're like, "Me." And then it's this huge fun thing. And maybe my favorite moment was the dating game moment because
with the silhouette
we just got to see his silhouette and his sort of proportions. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's perfect. It's perfect. You know,
do you guys realize we saw him in a suit when they were walking down the spacewalk too to get to like a ship?
The Thing.
He was like not the big guy in the back, right? Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Thing.
You're right. Yes.
So we got to see him with the rest of the family.
Yes. So which means at that point maybe they already have all their powers, right? That like we've heard other details that this is not going to be an origin movie that we're going to pick up with them. And I liked your take, Adam, that it might be like a documentary style, which would be really interesting if some or all of the movie has that kind of flavor. Like,
anyway, I mean, that was the flavor of the footage that we saw. Whether or not that's translated into the actual film, for even if it was honestly just for parts of it, like if it's 1960s, it's the race to space, and it's all about exploration outside of Earth, then it would be cool if that's reflected in how some of it is shot, because this was shot like. Old documentary style, 4x3, and it was cool to see it. So if there is moments like that in the movie where it's the first family in outer space, this first American or whatever, you're doing something different. You're doing something we haven't necessarily seen before. And especially, this is now the third reboot of the Fantastic Four. You had the Corman, then the Fox versions,
right,
and then you have the 2015 Fox version, and it's like, cool, man. At this point, you got to really do something different, otherwise people are going to walk in and go, this shit again.
True.
Do I need to see the first three to understand the fourth?
Galactus also looked really cool because he kind of reminded me of the Celestials from Eternals, but he had more sort of technology kind of doodads and things and like little tech lines across his, but it was still like a guy in a helmet, basically, like a still humanoid, versus the Celestials, which are just like, they look like, cheese grater heads, and then they show up and do something. This was like a face, a human face. Yeah, just looked awesome. The vibe was great. I still am like, I just want them to keep going, and I want them to be in the sacred timeline. I don't want going forward to be, for only one selfish reason, I don't want them to be set up in their own universe where anytime they want to interact with other characters, they just have to travel to another universe. That seems easy peasy, but my frustration is I want a New York City where Spider-Man can swings by the Baxter Building and Johnny Storm is there. I want a New York City where She-Hulk is looking for work and she knocks on the Baxter Building and the thing's like, good timing, I'm going on vacation. And now She-Hulk is going to be a member of the Fantastic Four. So if they're in another universe, it's just one little extra hurdle to do those kinds of story things. You know what I mean? Where I think the whole point of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is you don't have to do that. You know, they're just
interconnectivity.
there.
Yeah.
I think we will get to that point. I don't think it's going to be resolved in this movie. I think Doctor Doom is going to be the thing that kind of brings everything together. I think they're going to make Doom be that bigger than Thanos threat. Given that we're going to talk about all the RDJ stuff, but canonically, Doom, God Doom, destroys the entire multiverse and brings everything to his planet, Battleworld. He uses other superheroes to create his own universe because he wants to be the ruler of all. And I think that would be an outstanding way to end the Multiverse Saga, with Doom like crushing everybody. So I don't know. We'll see. I think it's not going to be resolved in this movie, though, Hector.
You're right. And here's my take is, because I do want these actors to be playing characters that are sort of like born from the Marvel Cinematic Universe's sacred timeline, reality 616, reality 199999, whatever you want to call it. My theory is, before we even see this movie, at some point in the Marvel timeline, our Doctor Doom, not the Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom, but like the true Doctor Doom in Latveria, used his technology and sorcery to not only banish the Fantastic Four to another reality, but throw them back in time to a place where he thought they were going to be cut off and never be a bother to him again. But Reed Richards was like, oh, 60s tech, no problem. And was able to, like, they still end up becoming the Fantastic Four. You know, and then I think they're almost at some point, maybe Avengers Secret Wars, going to learn that information, that like, wait, our reality isn't even where we're from. Like it's not even supposed to be. Maybe someone from the TVA will be like, you were never supposed to be there. Maybe Doom used his power to hide this reality from the TVA. We don't even know that it was there, but this isn't even supposed to. You're supposed to be here. You appeared in New York City in the year 2007, 6 months before Iron Man, Tony Stark came back from Afghanistan. Like retroactive continuity where they go, no, you four have been the Fantastic Four for about 20 years or something, and you should be here. And I think they might retroactively make them Marvel's first family, like legit. And then going forward, everyone will be like, Spider-Man will be like, I grew up with the Fantastic Four. They've been in New York this whole time. Like, it's going to be like a reality reset where people are just like, whoa. And that's just another thing that before we even get to Doom, Doom has already been such a villain. He's done this.
Yeah.
That's my theory. That's what I want. So that's
some really rewriting multiversal shenanigans.
Yeah,
holy God!
I think we need to bookmark this whole conversation because we have learned that we in 2017 correctly guessed some things that happened in the Deadpool movie, and so we've called things that happened in the MCU.
Hector predicted about doing a Riddler Zodiac movie in like 2015 in our very, 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 very first YouTube video of all time. And then it came to fruition 5 years later. So thanks, Hector.
Yes, exactly.
No problem.
So bookmark this whole conversation.
It might be also because just today I saw people, because of the news, because of Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, people are sharing pages from the 2015 Secret Wars comic, and they're like describing it online, and they're like, the resolution to that, the end final conflict is not this big battle. It is two men facing off in a white nothingness. It's Reed Richards and Victor Von Doom. And they're sort of like the most important hero and villain of the Marvel brand, right? They're so pivotal, and they're just sort of facing off against one another, and it's a sort of battle of wits and the battle of souls. And I'm like, I think an actor like Pedro Pascal could pull that off. I don't know if it's going to be Pedro versus Robert Downey Jr., but but fans have already been speculating Robert Downey Jr. is going to be this variant, blah 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 blah, going to show up in the movie, and at the end, the true Doom is going to come in and like destroy him, and then it'll be a new actor. I'm so conflicted about that for so many reasons, right?
Sounds like we're just going to get into Avengers now.
Are we just going to get into it, Hector? Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Go.
This is it. This is
you guys,
the bomb drop of the con.
You guys should explain, the three of us sitting there, and sort of what your emotions were as the thing happened. You guys should talk about it.
Well, I mean,
set the stage.
First of all, we're sitting in Hall H, and I think at the very beginning of the panel, or even before it started, Augustine turned to both of us and goes, guys, I think they're going to reveal Dr. Doom and the actor who is going to play him. And I was like, okay, I'll give you the Doctor Doom thing. I think that's very plausible. But the actor, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think we're there yet. So we go, the whole panel goes. We get to the end.
Well, let's also tell them you guys were there since 7 a.m.
Don't remind me. We don't need to talk about that. I did a 10-hour live stream that nearly killed me, so...
right. Burritos.
You got
Thank
to put that into context, though, because that's Die Hard. That's Die Hard. You guys gave your whole day and your bladders for this event. So
it was bad.
Yeah, your bladders literally exploded.
And the lines for the bathroom were way too long. And I took a massive unhealthy dump just a few hours before, because I was like, I didn't want to miss a panel, but I had to miss a panel. I went to go get some water and some snackies, and then went to the restroom, and just like it was bad. So we're saying we're in like a bad mood, but and the Marvel panel opened with the Deadpool and Wolverine choir, which was so fun. We hadn't even seen the movie, but it was so fun. Then the Captain America stuff, the Thunderbolts stuff, the Fantastic Four stuff. Surprise, the cast is fun. We're like, oh my God. Then the Russos come out to confirm the thing, which all kind of makes sense to really distract everybody. Kang Dynasty. Don't worry about it. Don't worry.
Hey guys.
So they basically neuralize everyone.
They neuralized everyone when the Fantastic car came out.
Yeah.
Right. The headlights are like, oh, okay. Right, great.
Yeah. They were spraying forget mist into the crowd.
Yeah. How's that thing flying? This is crazy.
Oh my God.
So then they first confirmed Avengers Secret Wars, which is like they put up the title and everybody screamed, and I was like, we knew this.
We've been there. We've been there.
That's fine. That's fine. And then I think it was Joe Russo that was like, me and Anth, we're going to do this because we love this comic book, but we knew that we would need to do a pivotal, essential movie before we could get to Secret Wars with
and then the lights
one of the greatest characters of all time. And it was hype, dude. It was great. It was great. We got confirmation that
I screamed
this was happening.
Well, it was funny too because there was like a little bit of a pause, right? He says we have to make one essential film prior to this that introduces one of Marvel's greatest characters. And there's a pause and we're kind of waiting like, are you going to like have a body pop out of the floor? Like what's about to happen? And then slowly the lights go from red to green. And right before that happened, Augustine says Doom and they turn green. And of course, that's got to be who else? The Hulk? No, it's not gonna be the Hulk. It's gonna be Doctor Doom.
The Green Goblin. It's Doctor Doom. They showed us the title first. Avengers Doomsday was the title. My thought on the title was, well, James Gunn is pissed because now he can't use that for a Superman sequel, but that's fine. That's neither here nor there. And then the choir of Doombots was out there. Everyone's freaking out. I'm like trying to squint. I'm like, is this going to be the official sort of Doctor Doom design? Like, what are they wearing? Is it just a cheapie, whatever? Or is this like a Marvel Studios? This is what the design's going to be. I'm still unclear on that because it was just that little cheapie little thing that the actor was playing. He comes out and they're like, we needed the greatest actor of all time. Now, also before the panel, when Augustine said, I think they're going to reveal the Doom actor, Augustine was like, Javier Bardem. It's going to be Javier Bardem. And I was like, that would be incredible. It would still be
the only guy.
It would still be problematic because the character of Doom is supposed to be Eastern European, not Spanish. He's supposed to be Romani, ethnically, racially, which is something I'm not qualified to speak on, but it is important to the character's background to have that background, right? You want these movies to have good Romani representation. Unfortunately, with the Marvel Comics, most of these iconic characters being developed in the 60s, Romani representation was not great. A lot of them are villainous. A lot of them are, bad guys, maybe turn good like the Scarlet Witch, but even that has the point being, it's like, it still would have been not the greatest for the character, but Javier Bardem is he's phenomenal.
Aces.
Then when the Russos go, we need the greatest actor of all time. Adam says out loud, Leonardo DiCaprio? And for a second, I was like, they might have gotten Leonardo DiCaprio, which is another like...
Who was like, he told Timothy Chalamet, never do a superhero movie, don't do this, don't do that. And I'm like, I could be it.
But they might have just like backed up that truck of money. Like, I'm so curious. And then the actor steps forward and he's in this green suit and everyone was like just freaking out that we're about to see whoever this is. My first thought was, oh, he's kind of short and thin. Like, I was like, his arms are skinny. So I'm like, it's not
quiet.
I was like, it's not Javier. It's not Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, DiCaprio's he could be a bigger guy. And I'm like, who is this like thin, fit, petite man?
Average sized man.
Does the thing. Average sized man.
Yeah.
He does the thing. And I thought it was a joke, dude. I thought it was.
Me too.
He was literally.
I
he was literally
100%
just
thought
like
it was a joke.
that. Just 2 seconds later, he's gonna be like, I'm just kidding. I'm just here to support the Russos. I love them. I'm coming back as a Tony Stark variant in Secret Wars. It's all fun. But here's the real actor, my friend Leonardo DiCaprio, or some shit. I thought we were, my friend Cillian Murphy, or some shit.
Yeah.
But it
That
wasn't that. It was, he soaked it up. And the hype in there was insane because we're all just like, oh, Robert, we love you. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't think I like this because this isn't the true Doctor Doom. And before they revealed it, Joe Russo said, thanks to the
unimaginable possibilities in the Marvel multi-universe.
Which is like, we could pick that apart, but I'm like, I'm positive the guy just stumbled and meant to say, multiverse, so he just, whatever. I wouldn't pick that apart. We think we all understand what he's trying to say. But then Downey says,
new mask. Same task.
And then everybody goes nuts, but me and Adam and Augustine, we're looking at each other. I'm looking at Augustine, number one Doom fan, and I'm like, I don't like this. I don't think I like this. I feel weird.
Yeah.
Everybody's cheering.
I cheered a little bit,
and
but then I was like,
You pulled a Mark Ruffalo from 2010. You were like, yeah, huh?
yeah.
I think I yelled, no way, when Robert Downey Jr. was on the screen, when he was on the stage. I was just like, oh my God. And then I'm like, wait a minute, hang on. This can't be real. I'm waiting for, and I sat there. I was like, I'm about to wait until Kevin Smith starts talking because I have a feeling that they were just going to go, just kidding, hang on, but they didn't. They left it.
Very weird. I honestly, the more I think about it, and this is going to sound like I'm a full-blown hater at this point, the more I think about it, the more I dislike this decision. I feel like there could have been a better way to present something like this. I feel like the cheers in the crowd were because I feel like anybody would cheer that way for anything Robert Downey Jr. did. The fact that he came out and surprised people at a Marvel panel would have gotten that kind of cheer, whether he just jumped on stage in the middle of somebody's presentation.
He was playing
or whatever,
a fucking ball lint in the MCU.
Yeah, exactly. If he was playing, who would he be playing? Howard the Duck. If he was playing Howard the Duck, he would have gotten that response, right? So I think that was part of the massive response in the crowd. Everybody started chanting Robert Downey Jr. And so I know that the moment before Kevin Feige asked any questions, I literally said out loud, I have so many questions. And then he said, and I was like, yes, absolutely. Wait, where are you going? Like, I needed, you're not going to have a Q&A? Usually Hall H panels have a Q&A. They didn't have one. Clearly, obviously. I can't not think about, Hector and I had on the drive home, maybe like a 3-hour conversation about
oh my God.
all this. But also Hector and I hung out a lot after, and it was just every moment of silence that we had in between each other was filled with the conversation of like, what's going on? Because it was just swimming in my head and I just couldn't get it out. I couldn't wrap my thoughts around like, okay, there's so much that this could potentially mean. And people were, some comments were trying to say that it's not that deep, blah, blah, blah. It is. It's not just the fact that it's like Robert Downey Jr. It's the fact that he represents Iron Man at this point. Like, yeah, clearly actors can play different roles. That actor in anything in the MCU is Iron Man. And I don't know if you will ever be able to convince me otherwise. That actor is Iron Man in the MCU. So to bring that kind of energy to Doom, I think does Doom a huge disservice. And Doom can stand on his own and he will stand on his own. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. This is so different than I've seen on our video that we shot behind the hotel in San Diego. People were like, if Chris Evans can play Johnny Storm, Human Torch in 2 movies, and then years later play a completely different Marvel character, Captain America, and I go, yeah, but this is different because those are different universes from the get. But this is supposed to be the same one. So I don't think that argument works. I think this is closer to like Hugh Jackman coming back to play Wolverine, knowing that at some point Marvel Studios is going to have their own version of this character. And I think they're doing it because it's the Multiverse Saga and because they were developing a Deadpool movie, and then Ryan Reynolds got a call with Hugh Jackman where he's like, I want to do it again, but I want those two characters to mix it up. So it all just like worked out. I don't know if Robert Downey Jr. called Marvel and went, I want to be Doctor Doom, because that's insane. This feels like it is. And before we go, I will acknowledge too that this announcement wasn't for us. It wasn't for Doctor Doom fans. It was for my mom, who's going to find out that he's coming back to Marvel movies and go, oh, that's interesting.
You
I'll
have
go
no
see
idea.
that. And it's massive. Yeah, it's massive.
I came home. My girlfriend's dad turns to me.
Yeah.
The first thing he says,
what happened?
Oh, I hear Robert Downey Jr. is going to play a villain now. And I was like,
Yeah.
shit.
So
We need context.
And the other thing I saw too was a great internet Twitter post or meme where they're like, in wrestling, there's a thing where if a main event gets canceled, if you get a replacement event at the last second, it needs to be bigger than what was originally promised. And I'm like, it's such a bummer that the pivot includes a character who I think is enough of the pull, just the character alone, Doctor Doom, but not because this character hasn't shown up yet. And I think this is also closer to John Krasinski playing Mr. Fantastic before we get the real Mr. Fantastic, which I'm hoping is going to stay Pedro Pascal for that one movie for the multiverse shenanigans, and he died. And again, Hugh Jackman coming back for this one movie, probably again for Secret Wars, but he's not going to be Wolverine in the Marvel Cinematic. He's not going to get Adamantium again from Tiamut, in 2028. He's not going to play that character again. It's going to be their homegrown version of the character moving forward. And it's just a bummer that before we get to that instead of what's best for the Marvel story that they're trying to tell, is that they're going, what's best for the profit, the movie money making. Let's use the Multiverse Saga as an excuse. Yeah, because it just it's going to have people. I might be repeating myself from what we said when we were talking about it behind the hotel. It's just going to have people drawing a comparison between, well, I liked Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. I thought that's how Doctor Doom's supposed to be. When they hire an unknown Romani actor with a thick Eastern European accent, and who looks different, whose costume's going to be different than whatever Robert Downey Jr. is going to be. I've already seen a comic book artist or an artist as a lark, and it's really cool and really neat, drawing comic book panels where it's like his little take of a little scene of Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom coming into a Council of Dooms, and then he goes, but then the real Doctor Doom comes in and like fries him. He's like, I think this could be cool, and he does that. And he made this after the announcement. I've already seen that shared by people who don't know that's not an actual Marvel comic, and that pisses me off. Do you know what I'm saying? I've already seen that co-opted by people that are like, for those of you thinking that this is going to be stupid and it's not from the comics, take a look. I'm like, that's not from the comics. This is not a comic book choice. This is not a comic book inspiration. That was fan-made, and it's already tricked people. And that's who this decision is for. Is for people who don't read comic books, which again, that's not a bad thing. This is not a gatekeeper thing. I'm saying for regular people, for Adam's girlfriend's dad, for my mom, for all of our aunts and uncles, next time we go to a family function and they want to talk to the nerd in the family, it's going to be us being like, I guess he's coming back. And they're like, ooh, that's cool. I love him. I loved Oppenheimer. Great. Fucking great. I guess they did this for you. And the movie's going to make $2 billion opening weekend. Awesome. And it just means another few years before we get, like, I get why Secret Wars is the logical conclusion for the Multiverse Saga, but it is a bit of a bummer that Secret Wars is being done without their own homegrown Doctor Doom, because it's like one story taken away from the real Doctor Doom, that when they do that moving forward, they just won't do Secret Wars again. And you're like, damn, dude, but that's a really good Doctor Doom story. Kind of the same way that Ultron wasn't created by Hank Pym Ant-Man, but it was Tony Stark, because there was no Ant-Man in the movies yet. So they were like, it's going to be Tony and Bruce Banner. Cool. One less interesting thing about the Ant-Man character that maybe could have come back and made Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania better if the villain was Ultron and he came back, and but if there's a connection between those characters. So, but I get maybe they just want to get in and out of the Multiverse Saga as quick as possible, because it's not the Infinity Saga, right? So they're like, should we postpone Secret Wars? Should we wait till we do the Fantastic Four, a new Doctor Doom, a Doctor Doom movie or Disney Plus series, and then by 2030 we'll do Secret Wars? Maybe it's not worth it to them. Maybe they just let's just go, because we got to get to our X-Men. Iman Vellani's not getting any younger. She's supposed to be a young person looking up to Wolverine. Like we gotta get going.
We still got a Shang-Chi project that we need to pump
Yeah.
out. Like, there's just so much stuff happening.
You
So
know,
much
it's been really interesting looking at the slate for compared from 2022 to now, and then looking back and thinking about the Infinity Saga. You know, at this point, and I know it's only a few years, but even so, you know, you think about how quickly you were able to get 3 Iron Man movies from 2008 to 2013, how many Captain America movies you were able to get between 2011 and 2016. You know, you think about how many movies they made to build these characters, to make sure that when we got to Avengers films, stakes felt real. You feel like there could be some kind of a loss. We've seen so many of these characters in the Multiverse Saga once. Maybe they cross over in a post-credit scene. There are a lot of characters, Shang-Chi, that we only end up seeing in one thing. And then in like years, we see them in something else. In years, we see them in something else again. And I feel like that is one thing that has been really lacking in the Multiverse Saga. There is no Robert Downey. There is no Chris Evans. There is no Iron Man. There is no Cap for us to root for, because they're not doing the work to build up someone new or some new people. So I think that is also kind of the tough thing of where they've kind of put themselves, is they're trying to do a lot of stories in one saga, and they're just capping the entire saga with 2 Avengers movies instead of having building blocks that build to some big event. And I get it. They wanted to do something different. They didn't want to just repeat the ingredients or the sauce for what made the Infinity Saga so great. But I do hope that they took that as a learning lesson to say, okay, we maybe did some things wrong. We need to build more building blocks for certain characters that are the cornerstone of whatever the next version of our universe is, and then we can build to something big. We can't just do one thing at a time, introduce 10 new characters, never see them again until an Avengers movie, and the audience has no sort of like love and passion for them, because if they don't, then they're not going to care if they die. They're not going to care if they show up. They're going to want Toby, Andrew, Hugh Jackman, all these legacy characters. Let's throw Robert Downey into the mix. Let's throw Chris Evans into the mix. They're going to constantly be forced to retread old things, and they really got to like do the work to build up some of these new characters, which I'm sure they will do with X-Men. But
it's really frustrating though, and you're right. It's really frustrating because I've seen people say, why isn't Phase 4 as beloved as the first 3? The thing I see is people go, it's because they introduced a bunch of characters that nobody cares about. First of all, shut up. I care about them. Secondly, and we just want to see our classic characters again. Every time I see that defense for why people have dropped off with Marvel or the MCU, or why these movies aren't hitting as much, it feels, I'm going to get controversial here, it feels racist and sexist. It feels like it's like you're trying to find an excuse for, like, I don't like Sam Wilson Captain America, I like Steve Rogers Captain America, and ignoring the fact that Steve had those 3 movies and Sam was a supporting character in those films but hasn't had his own movie yet, and he had a TV show that was also like skewed a little bit because of the global pandemic. It's frustrating because you're right though, Adam. It's like we have all these different projects, and I'm scrolling through right now, and we've seen Shang-Chi once, and we've seen the Eternals once, and now we're hearing that the Eternals might not ever, and that had one of the biggest cliffhangers out of all these movies, and now that might not ever be addressed, which is frustrating. Peter Parker Spider-Man technically had 2 movies that have been released since Endgame, but one was like the epilogue, and the other was, takes place not too long after. Doctor Strange had 1 movie. Kate Bishop, like you said, in 1 major TV show. Black Widow had a movie, but her character's retired, and it was Yelena. Popped up again in Hawkeye. That's good. She-Hulk, 1 show. Moon Knight, 1 show. Shuri, 1 appearance as Black Panther. 1. And Echo got her own show. Ms. Marvel got a show. We saw Thor in Thor Love and Thunder once. We saw the Guardians a few times in that movie, in the holiday special, and then Guardians 3. And Loki had a few seasons. And that basically brings us up to like Secret Invasion / the Marvels. And that's kind of where we're at. And so, yeah, the Carol Danvers character had 1 sort of major appearance, supported by the two supporting characters from the TV shows, WandaVision and Ms. Marvel. When you compare that to that exact lineup you said, the amount of movies that Evans got in a short amount of time, the amount of
10
movies
appearances that
Thor
him and Downey had. Yeah.
It's frustrating because I think you're right. I don't want these to just be crossover city all the time. But there are these like unanswered questions about, like, if I go up to a regular person right now and I go, what year are we currently in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? They're not going to know. And it would, like, years ago when everything was sort of lining up, and even right after Endgame with like the blip, everyone knew like, oh, okay, we're in 2023. This is exciting. We're in 2023. And then 2023 actually happened in real life. And it just feels like they're just not as maybe supportive of these characters as they were with the three white guys that led the Avengers, two of them named Chris. If those characters get these many movies, why hasn't there been a She-Hulk season 2 greenlit? Why hasn't, but it's like we discussed at the beginning of this, dude. A bunch of factors outside of the control of the creative. It's a bunch of, it's Disney executives that wanted a ton of Disney Plus content, and then the next executive came in and went, that's stupid and it's wasting a lot of money. So then that leaves these interesting, often women and brown characters kind of screwed, and it throws them out to an audience that's like, we miss the white guys, and if they're not realizing that's what they're saying, that's what they're saying, and it's totally unfair and it sucks. And I want each of these characters, who are brilliant characters, and some of them have really shined, like Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, I think is such a highlight character of the past couple years, but then she's in the movie The Marvels that is not universally a banger. I really enjoyed that movie. It's real fun, but I think the three of us would agree Deadpool and Wolverine is more successful in terms of like fun and fan service and crowd pleasing. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's an unfair advantage because I got all that nostalgia. It's Hugh Jackman, but is that because it wasn't since 2019 that Brie Larson had her solo movie? Like, is that part of the reason? I don't know. Now I'm sad. Now I'm just sad as I want all these women and minorities to succeed.
I know. And that to me, I feel like is part of like the whole, it's always going to be part of the conversation, right? Because it's exactly what you're saying. It's a lot of people who want to see these actors come back, when in reality, you also got to realize these actors cannot play these characters forever. Hugh Jackman is like an exception to the rule, right? He's done it for 24 years. He's done a ton of stuff in between that, though. Those movies were consistent to a point and then became pretty inconsistent. And then he had a lot of freedom to do other stuff. Whereas I feel like with Downey and Evans, it really kind of was a little bit harder for them to do other things unless they were very small projects, very indie projects. Because if another movie wanted them for 6 months, maybe they couldn't because they were off of Captain America. They did an indie movie for 30 days and then they had to go back to doing the next Captain America thing. So I get that too. You know, actors, some of these actors maybe don't want to do this for the rest of their life, for the rest of their acting career, because they have other ambitions. Also, story-wise, yeah, I mean, you know, as much as I think maybe 10 years ago, I'd have been like, let Evans play this forever, in the back of my head, or maybe now I'm more like, I don't necessarily want to just see Steve Rogers until the end of time. I want to see an evolution to this universe, because if it's the same actors, same characters, same thing, the stories will eventually feel a bit repetitive. I think it's more interesting if in movie terms, these characters can evolve into other roles. These characters can evolve based on the impact that they have on the universe that they're in. And, you know, we can have new stories and new people come through. Comic books can do whatever they want because they will go on until the end of time. And as soon as a character is too old, they'll just write a new version, or they'll reboot the age, or they'll do something. You can't really do that with Robert Downey Jr. He's a living, breathing human being who's going to be 65, 70, 80, 90 at some point. And he can't be Tony Stark forever. I don't care what people say about AI. It's not the same. It never will be the same. It'll never trump an actor's performance, and studios will be dumb to even humor that.
A thing is not beautiful because it lasts.
1,000%. I think what you're saying, Hector, about the people unknowingly saying either misogynistic or like racist things is definitely a thing that I've seen firsthand in the evolution of, you know, the characters staying or whatever. But I also think, because I've experienced this as well, people just don't like change. It's happened in every single fandom. It's happened in every single like piece of media, right? Like they kind of just want to watch the same thing over and over. I'm sure if you ask some Star Wars fans, some ones that we might get along with, they'd say, yeah, I just want to keep seeing Luke and Leia and Han over and over again. I just want to follow their stories, right? And that's definitely a huge part of things. Humans don't like change as in general. And so, yeah, I think to our detriment, or to the human detriment, that's kind of built into how we kind of function. Change is scary. I personally don't fear change. I personally embrace the change, and I like the freshness, and I like progressing. I think that's a huge part of it. Like, you have to see a progression, for me specifically, in the things that I like. Otherwise they get stale. And things that do get stale, I tend to forget about and never talk about again, because that's what they turned into, right? And there are some people who just cannot let go of the things that they love, and that's A-okay. That's perfectly acceptable. But when you start getting mad about those things, that's where the problem comes along, and you start calling other people names, and you start getting upset. That's the issue. And so it's multifaceted in why fans are reacting the way they are to these kinds of projects. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning. I hope the creators are taking our opinions with a grain of salt. I hope they do understand where we're coming from, but I hope that they have a way that we can't see out of kind of like the messiness that was dropped on us in Hall H on Sunday night. Like, that's really all I can describe it as. It's just messy, bro. It's just a fucking hot, messy mess right now. And it's
could you
had us
imagine for a
talking
second if
an hour and 40 minutes at this point.
Can you imagine if it was like Javier Bardem, end of show? Like, that shit would be crazy, dude. It would be amazing, and it would be I don't know, so many different things. You're right, Augustine. I mean, that was part of our chat too, driving up from San Diego Comic-Con, was like talking about fandom, toxicity in fandom, everything. Talking about how people respond to promotion when they have the information, when they don't have the information. And so that was my takeaway from this announcement is maybe you were right, Augustine. Maybe there was a better way for them to. We talked to somebody at the movie theater, Deadpool and Wolverine, and they were like, I would have loved it if that was a reveal in the theater. I was sitting down to watch the movie, and it's Robert Downey Jr. If there's any way to keep that kind of a secret under wraps. But the economic reality is they did what they did because they wanted this. They wanted the buzz. They wanted moms and dads to go, I heard that Robert Downey's coming back. So what's all that about? They want that. So we're going to get that for the next 2 years. We're going to have to deal with that.
News organizations that have never commented on anything superhero related talk about this. Right. I think that's the major thing that's going on here.
Yeah.
Clearly.
I think that video got the most like views on Instagram at like 200 billion, something astronomically insane, because it's just that big of a deal. Crazy. But I agree, it's part of the marketing machine. It's part of getting hype built for a project. It's all this. It's us talking about it, and we may have very uneven thoughts about the whole decision, obviously, and I think even Kevin Feige, somebody had asked him about it, and he said, "Good. I'm glad people are confused. I'm glad people are asking questions. I'm glad people are doubtful, because it's our responsibility to prove why it'll work. It's our responsibility to deliver."
Dude, that's why I love that guy. That's why I love that guy, honestly. That even through all this, that dude knows exactly what they're doing. 100%. He knows exactly what their responsibility is.
Yeah.
That's mad respect to that answer. Honestly, that's kind of nice. Like,
yeah.
Generally speaking, obviously the hype in that room, aside from like us and maybe a few other people who are comic book people who were like, what is happening here? The general vibe and the tone in that room was, we are very, very stoked about this. But now the conversation after all the hype has died down is a bit of like, okay, so what exactly are we doing here? And even I've seen in some of my mentions, there's conflicting things, and people are speaking on it who weren't even in the panel, truthfully. We're not even at Comic-Con. And I think that also is a little bit of my frustration, is when people try to matter-of-factly explain things to you, when 1, they don't get the press releases, 2, they're not in the room, and 3, they're just running off of what other people on Twitter have said. It's so important to source where you get your information from, and citing and looking at the videos of how the Russos introduce Doctor Doom, the way that they mention the craziness of the multiverse shenanigans is, I think, really important to understand that, yes, he is playing Victor Von Doom. No, I do not think that Victor Von Doom that he is playing is from the Sacred Timeline. I just don't. And if I'm proven wrong, then they better have one really, really, really good reason why another guy who looks like Tony Stark, but is not Tony Stark. It is in fact Victor Von Doom. It better be a really good reason, and it better be buttoned up so perfectly that you could not dissect any sort of error or anything from it. But
Long lost twin.
yeah,
Hi.
I know.
That's it.
Gasp
Dream
in Spanish.
sequence,
It's a
guys.
telenovela.
I got it. Dream sequence. That's how you get out of it. Nobody's ever thought of that before. Dream sequence.
I would say that my final thoughts on the whole thing is I'm excited to learn more as we get closer to the process of this movie actually being made. I'm excited to see what little tidbits that they reveal throughout the next 6, 7, 8, 9 projects. We also have D23 coming up where we'll hopefully get more. So I'm optimistic because I like the fact that Kevin Feige said it's our responsibility to prove that this is going to be worth people's time to invest in. So I'm hoping that that all goes well. But what are your guys' final thoughts?
After this weekend and getting to hang out with you guys, like, I love talking about this shit with you guys. I love watching this stuff with you guys. This is still my favorite film franchise of all time. It's the special cocktail of like how I grew up, the stuff that I loved as a kid, and holding on to that passion as I got older. And then all of these movies coming out in my youth and into my 30s. And they're just the best action comedies. That's what every one of these movies are. It's an action comedy with emotion. That's the genre. Action, heroic, with humor and heart. That's it. And they're so entertaining. And Deadpool and Wolverine, watching it with you guys, just reminded me, I always have a good time watching these movies, but especially after the past couple years and seeing the fans respond the way they have. To watch that movie with you guys, I'm like, okay, I'm dumb. This is my favorite movie franchise of all time. They're just such a joy to watch. And I'm so excited about all the stuff that's coming out next year and beyond. I'm excited that Kevin Feige just had that response, because I'm like, it is up to you guys. You better hire some great writers if you don't already. You better, I'm really curious to see how it all shakes out.
Stephen McFeely, one of the writers.
I'm just in it. I'm along for the ride, and so far they haven't led me astray. So
fair.
They've led me astray a few times. I'm worried about Doom. Yeah. I'm just worried about my boy Doom. That's all. That's all it boils down to. I hope this change is good. I hope that, I have a feeling, like you said, Hector, they better hire some writers. I think the story is already written out. I think every single in and out of the Doom sequence or whatever it happens to be, saga, whatever it is already on a giant board inside of Kevin Feige's office, with red strings attached to everything and all of that craziness, right? I think it's all there. And I do feel like this was a very much calculated mess that they got us into. And all we got to do is just wait for more details. That's really what we got to do. And then just wait to watch the movie. And that's when we make our decision. So
Truth. Yeah. The final product is going to dictate anything and everything always. But of course, let us know your thoughts. We talked about it in the beginning and we were like, we could go for probably 30, 40 minutes. We, of course, went over as usual. That's fine. But there's a lot of really good things and a lot of really interesting things to talk about. So, of course, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think this is going to work out, having RDJ play Dr. Doom? Do you think that he is from the main Secret Timeline, or do you think he will be from another universe?
Just to try and focus on some positives, even if you're number one MCU hater and you're reveling in it and you love it, can you at least give me what has been your favorite sort of post-Endgame project? I'm curious to know, what have people really responded to? So let us know in the comments, oh, I love Spider-Man No Way Home, or I love Guardians 3, or straight up, I want to hear from some Eternals fans. I'm a fan. Might not be my favorite, but there's some people that are like, this is my favorite MCU movie. I've seen them. I know there are dozens of us. Dozens. So let us know in the comments. Keep it
absolutely
positive.
Let us know. Also come back. We're going to be doing a live discussion of Deadpool and Wolverine, get into all the spoilies, talk about the entire movie, how we felt about it, what we liked, what we did not like. And also stay tuned. There's plenty of stuff coming to the channel. We're starting a Batman Cape Crusader very soon. We'll be diving into so much stuff. There's videos for that on the channel as well. Check out our Patreon. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.